The following content constitutes a verbatim reading of every legal word contained within a publicly accessible, unsealed, and open court document. The reading may contain minor idiosyncrasies, such as mispronunciations or slight stumbles by the reader. It is important to note the document is freely available to the public in its entirety. The purpose of this reading is solely to recite the words present in the transcripts without any alteration or interpretation of their meaning. This reading is the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump. Indictment number 71543/2023, falsifying business records, first degree. These proceedings are from Part 59, Morning Session, page 2507. This is the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, Indictment 71543 of 2023. Appearances, starting with the people, please.
For the people, ADA's Joshua Steinglass, Susan Hoffinger, Becky Mangold, Matthew Colangelo, Christopher Conroy, and Catherine Ellis.
Good morning, Your Honor. Susan Nicholas. I am here with President Trump, Todd Blanche, Emil Bove, and Jedalia Stern. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Trump. Is there anything we need to discuss?
I don't think so, Judge.
All right.
Your Honor, just one thing. We want to renew our objection this morning to... We are informed that the witness today, the second witness, will be Stormy Daniels. We want to renew our objection to her testifying, in particular, to hear testifying about any details of any sexual acts. We think that this is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the charges in this case. And to the extent that it has any relevance, it's unduly prejudicial. And there really is no reason for it to be coming into the case about books and records here.
And when you say details of any sexual act, what do you mean? Do you mean more than just we had sex?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I will hear from the people.
Your Honor, this has been fully briefed by the defense, and Your Honor has ruled in your court decision on March 18th of 2024 at page 304. And you placed some limits on testimony regarding Karen McDougal and incidents in June, but no limits on the testimony of Stormy Daniels, obviously, recognizing that her testimony and the narrative completes the story of, the events that precipitated the payoff shortly before the election. The details of the encounter, Your Honor, are important. The defense has opened already on her credibility and reasons for why she did what she did. They have cited money that she has made on other things, and it's important for us to establish her credibility here. So, therefore, the details are important. We have been careful, Your Honor, to omit certain details that might be too salacious. We can, at some point, if you would like, list the things that we are omitting, although I don't think that it's necessary for me to do that in open court. But the general details of what occurred, including the sex act, barring certain details that are unnecessary, are a significant part of the story, but also very important for us in terms of her credibility.
So when you say that some details are necessary, can you give me a sense of what you have in mind?
Yes, I mean the details will be how she ended up having a sexual encounter with him. Obviously, we will elicit the conversation that occurred in the hotel room, at the defendant's hotel room. I think the full conversation is very, very important. How she even ended up having a sexual act with him, and then in terms of the sexual act, it will be just very basic. It's not going to involve any descriptions of genitalia or anything of that nature, but it's important for us to elicit how she came to have sex with him and how she felt about it at the time.
Your Honor, I understand that you ruled before already, but we are in a different place now. Have you seen the evidence in this case? And you have seen where it is. And there is just no need for those kinds of details here. There is a real question about the credibility of this woman. And she signed letters saying she didn't do this. And obviously that's an area for cross, but I don't think it's needed in this case. This case is a case about books and records, and we shouldn't be getting into how she felt about it. What happened in the room really...
Well, I don't know that Ms. Hoffinger said that. I'm satisfied with the representations that Ms. Hoffinger has made. She has indicated that they don't need to go into any details about the sexual act itself.
Well, Your Honor, there will be some details about the sexual act. Very brief, very brief. We have to elicit that they did have intercourse, Your Honor.
Well, that's fine.
Okay,
But we don't need to know the details of the intercourse.
that's correct. I agree with you that she has got credibility issues, right? And therefore, I think that it makes all the more important for the people to establish her credibility by eliciting certain background information about the events that led to that encounter. So I will allow that based on the representations that the people have made. Thank you.
All right, people, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, Your Honor.
Let's get the jury first. Yes, that's the third time.
All rise. Jury entering.
You all may be seated.
Again, this reading is the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, indictment number 71543/2023. We now move ahead in the Day 59 proceedings to page 2552, line 14.
Counsel, please approach. So I just want to go back for a second to Miss Necklace's objection earlier. She referenced her objection to feelings coming out. Did you also refer to feelings that you wanted to get into the feelings of Ms. Daniels?
I think she's going to describe a little bit about how she felt at the time because it corroborates what happened. Look, I think her account of what happened on that day is the account that would have been told to the American people prior to the election had she not entered into the NDA. It's significant.
Give me a sense of what she's going to say when she talks about her feelings, how she felt that day.
I mean, she's going to say, for example, at certain times she felt feelings leaving her hands and toes, that she felt that she was having a panic attack at one point. She will describe that some details came back to her later after seeing a movie called Bombshell, for example, which I think will help to explain certain times about what she remembered and what she didn't remember. So it's not going to be in great detail, but I think it's significant because for a period of time, she didn't remember how she got into bed and had sex with him. And so I think it's important to bring out partly how she was feeling at the time because it explains that. And again, the defense opened the door from the start to credibility issues. This is the account that would have been told to the American people had she not entered into the NDA. She entered into the NDA willingly, but had she not entered into the NDA, this is what would have been told to the American people, and that's why they wanted to pay her to remain silent.
Judge, it's not the account that would have been told. Her story has changed over time, and if they go into this, we will have to go into how her story has changed. This is all a fabrication.
This is not new. This is not a fabrication, nor has her story changed. I think we'll be able to establish if the defense goes into this. They are saying that this is a new fabrication. There are prior consistent statements, and so we will deal with that next time.
To the extent that it helps to explain that she had forgotten some things and she remembered certain other things, I will allow it.
Okay.
To the extent that it goes into how she felt when she got into the bed and feelings while laying there, I think we should wait and see what happens on cross-examination.
So in other words, I can't elicit how she felt at the time, it explains why there are certain details she still doesn't remember.
What do you expect her to say with respect to that?
Precisely what I said. She's going to say that she felt numb. She didn't expect it to happen. She felt numb. At one point, she almost felt like she was having a panic attack, and she has not been able to remember some of the details. And some of the details she has always remembered, and some of the details, precisely how she got from the bathroom to the bed, some of them came back to her in 2019 when she saw a certain movie.
All right.
So I think it explains what we expect the defense will do and what they've indicated that they will do. So in our direct, we are entitled to bring this out and draw the sting in order to explain.
Well, we would not be going there if the prosecutor wasn't going there. So it's not drawing the sting out of... They are putting in very prejudicial material, and they are not drawing the sting out. They are essentially making this into rape, which is totally improper, and she felt threatened, and...
Let me make this clear.
And that she felt threatened into doing it.
Let me make this clear. She has always said, and she did not say, she will not say that She will not say that this is a sexual assault. That will not be her account, has not been her account, and never has been. So to the extent that that is the way that this defense is characterizing that, I will make that clear, and she will make that clear.
Judge, there is additionally another area that I don't know whether the prosecutors intend to go into, but I would ask that she be precluded from being asked. She has said on various occasions, starting in 2018, that she and her daughter were threatened by some random man.
That she
and her daughter's lives were threatened by some random man in a parking lot, and that's why she didn't tell her story earlier. And there is no connection at all to, I don't believe her story, but there is also just no connection to President Trump in any way on this, and so we would ask that that be precluded.
We are not suggesting that it was President Trump who did that. There are a few things that I would say. First of all, the defense opened the door in their cross-examination of Keith Davidson. They put in the clip saying that Avenatti said something out of her story of being threatened in a parking lot in 2011 by a man as being not true. It is also the basis of a defamation claim, which the defense opened the door to on their opening when they said that this is all just about the fact that she owes him some legal fees having to do with that case. So they've opened the door. It also goes to, Your Honor, directly to why she didn't tell her story at various times. So it's a critical piece. They've opened the door to it, and we should be allowed to elicit it.
The latter issue, you say they did open the door to... You can step back and just give me a second to think about that?
Sure. And, Your Honor, if I may ask for a few minutes before we start.
Sidebar concluded. I'm sorry, come back, please. Start sidebar. On direct examination, I'm going to ask you to not get into the feelings that you just described. You can get into the sexual act, that there was a sexual act. Of course, you can talk about how she got there, how she ended up in the room, just the facts. You can get into the facts.
Just don't ask her how she felt at the time?
Well, I don't want to get into how she felt emotionally at that time. I don't want you to get into that on your direct. We will wait and see what happens on cross-examination.
Okay.
And maybe we can revisit at that time.
Okay.
Okay. Sidebar concluded. All right, people, your next witness, please.
The people call Stormy Daniels, Your Honor.
Witness entering. Step up to the officer. Step up here. Raise your right hand and face the court clerk. Stormy Daniels, a witness called on behalf of the people, having been first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows. You could have a seat.
Thank you.
Pull your chair up to this microphone, please, and state your first and last name and spell your last name for the record.
Ready? My name is Stormy Daniels. Last name is D-A-N-I-E-L-S.
All right. Good morning, Ms. Daniels.
Thank you.
You may inquire.
Good morning, Miss Daniels.
Hi.
Miss Daniels, have you also been known as Stephanie Clifford?
Yes.
What name do you prefer that we use here in court?
Stormy Daniels.
Now, are you testifying here today pursuant to a subpoena?
Yes, I am.
Without providing any specific names, can you tell the jury a little about your family?
Sure. I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My parents divorced when I was 4, so I was raised mostly by my mom. Now I live in Florida with my partner, and I share custody of my young daughter with her dad.
And how long have you known your partner?
I have known him for almost 25 years.
Tell the jury a little bit about your life growing up in Louisiana.
Like I said, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My parents split when I was 4 years old. I was mostly raised by my mom. Very low income family. She was just a single working mom. I went to a private, very Christian, very strict elementary school that my dad paid for. And then I entered the magnet system, which is for you have to maintain a certain GPA in middle and high school. I went to engineering high school because I wanted to be a veterinarian, and they had the best recommendation for getting into college and getting a scholarship. So I graduated from Scotlandville Magnet High School in 1997. I graduated top 10% in my class for the country and applied to both LSU Veterinarian School and Texas A&M. I received a full scholarship from Texas A&M for veterinary medicine, but even that still requires you to pay for things that aren't included in the scholarships. So I took a year off from that, and I never actually got to go back.
So you never actually went. You didn't go to college, correct?
Correct. But I did take college classes in high school.
And you did participate in some clubs in high school?
Yes, I did.
What kind of clubs or hobbies were you involved with when you were in high school?
I was editor of my high school paper, so I was in the journalist club. I was in 4-H because I loved horses, and also they would write a recommendation for veterinary school. And then I was, aside from the regular AH, I was in the equine department of the AH department, which is the equestrian horseback riding part of that. And I was the Baton Rouge Ballet Company.
And I'm just going to ask you to slow down just a little bit so that the court reporter can get it all down, and also so that the jury can hear you.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'm sorry. Did you do some work during high school, some paperwork?
Yes, I did. I taught handicap rider lessons at the stable where I kept my horses in exchange for board and feed for my horses and riding lessons. And I shoved manure. And then later I went on to dancing.
Okay, tell us about the dancing when you went on to that.
I was 17, I think. And a friend of mine, I met a friend who told me that she was a dancer. And I thought she meant the same kind of dancing that I did, which was ballet and jazz and tap. I was wrong. She was an exotic dancer and invited me to the club to see her dance. And they didn't bother to check my ID, so I started dancing on the weekends, which was actually kind of cool because I didn't have to miss any classes and could still make more in 2 nights than I did shoveling manure 8 hours a day.
Whereupon at this time, Principal Court Reporter Susan Pierce Bates relieved Lisa Kramsky as the official court reporter. Continued from the previous page.
So you started making some money then in high school, is that right?
Yes.
And did you move out of your mother's house at some point?
Yes, ma'am.
During or shortly after high school?
When I was 17.
And just briefly, why did you move out of your mother's house just briefly?
My mother was very neglectful. She would disappear for days at a time. I wish I could say she was an addict of some sort. That would kind of be an excuse, but to this day, I really don't know. I lived in a really bad neighborhood, and she would just vanish. And so finally, it came to a head right around Christmas time of my senior year, and then I left for a little bit, for a couple of weeks, and then I came home. And since I was 17, which in Louisiana at the time, you are considered an adult, so I moved out.
And have you supported yourself ever since?
Yes.
Now, did there come a time that you started also doing some other work, for example, nude modeling for some magazines?
Yes, when I was 21.
Why did you do that?
Well, I was working at the club, as I said, and I would have like guest stars, and they're called featured entertainers. For those that don't know, it's like traveling acts that come in and they headline at the club. They put on very fancy burlesque shows. They showed either breathe fire or do aerial stilts, just like they are the star performance, and they give them all a special treatment. And because I had this background in actual dancing, and I was like, I want to do that, but you have to have some sort of reason to be the headliner. You have to have a reason they pay you to come in and be the star. And the way to do that is either to pose for magazines or do competitions or do adult movies. So if you are a regular girl in the club, you can come and perform. But if you are like in Playboy or Playboy Centerfolds or one of these people, then you could be a headliner. So you would have to have what they would call credentials or credits. And so I asked a lot of those performers how they got those. And of course, they said they have these credits or a reason to be the star. And they connected me with some photographers and videographers and went on to pose for some magazines and get some accolades, I guess, to be able to go on tour as the featured entertainer.
Would that enable you to make more money?
Yes, obviously. I mean, you get paid for that.
How old were you when you started that work?
21.
Now, did there come a time that you also worked in the adult film industry?
Yes.
Why did you move into doing that work?
It started the same way I just explained. So when you had those, you were this guest star, this featured entertainer, you can do contests and you can really, you could literally be Miss Nude North America, or you can do magazines, like I said, but each one of these are sort of like a level. They top out on play grade, and the people who make the most for their appearances were the girls performers who had done adult films. And I topped out of rate and was doing really well. I never had any sort of issue with nudity or sex or adult films. Went to California with a girlfriend of mine who was out there to do a shoot, and she obviously wanted me to go with her, and I never went to California. She said, I will pay for your trip. I'm so scared. So I went with her. I was an extra, like completely clothed, background extra in a bar on her shoots. And the director, who is a very famous director from a famous adult company, Wicked Pictures, saw me and said he actually thought I was already an adult actress and asked me if I would do another movie. I honestly was kind of scared to do it. And she said, I will do it with you. And just doing one, you can say you've done it, and it bumps you up in pay grade. So I said yes. And I will cut out a lot of the other details. And, 5 days later, she got on a plane to fly back home, and I got offered the contract at Wicked Pictures.
And how old were you at the time?
23.
Did there come a time that you started writing for adult films?
Yes. About 6 months later.
Were you still about 23 years old?
I was 23, yes.
Do you continue to write for adult films?
Yes, I still do.
And did there come a time when you started directing in that industry?
Yes. I directed my first adult film. It was a feature film, which is, there are two kinds of films. One is like not scripted and you just sort of like scene. And then there's no thinking, or you don't have to learn dialogue or whatever. And then there's adult features that are very scripted. Kind of the ones, if you cut out the really naughty stuff you will see on TV late at night, they are basically like actual movies that have sex. That's what the company I wrote for did. I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, adult feature director, and definitely the youngest female feature director. I started directing when I was 23, and I've directed over 150 films, and I have won 11 Best Director Awards and 2 Best Screenplays.
And have you also acted in what we would call mainstream movies?
Yes.
Could you give the jury examples of those you did?
Sure. I was in a movie called 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Finding Bliss, a whole bunch. I've been in TV shows, too.
I will just ask you to slow down a little bit.
I was in a television show called The Dirt with Courtney Cox. Super bad.
And have you also acted in some music videos?
Yes. I did some music videos for Maroon 5, a band called Granny 4 Barrel, Rob Zombie.
Have you also directed some music videos?
Yes.
Have you also written or are you writing some books?
Yes. I have written a book, and I am in the process of finishing up 2 others.
And the name of the book you completed?
Well, the book I completed was released in 2018, and it's called Full Disclosure, and 2 more are coming out next year.
And have you also done some comedy shows?
Yes.
Have you also in the past hosted a podcast?
Yes.
What was the podcast about?
The podcast was called Beyond the Norm. It was sort of anything that is beyond the norm. It was about anything from like serial killers, female serial killers, to UFO abductions, paranormal stuff, porn. It's beyond the norm, politics, anything like that.
A reminder, you are listening to a reading of the transcript of the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, indictment number 71543/2023. To ensure future court transcript readings of this and other cases, we kindly ask you to visit everylegalword.com and support this cause. We now resume this reading where we left off.
In connection with the podcast that might have involved politics in some of those, did you discuss Mr. Trump or your experience with him?
Yes, of course.
Do you still host that podcast?
Sadly, no, I don't.
Why not?
Because I got fired.
Why was that?
Because I was reluctant to continue talking about just that one narrative about this case and about politics. I was told I could pick a variety of things to talk about, and they just kept going down this one subject line. And
it is because of that subject line that you do not have the podcast?
Correct.
Were you recently featured in a documentary?
Yes.
What, briefly, was the documentary about?
My life and my story.
Included in that documentary, did you also speak about Mr. Trump and your experience with him?
Yes.
In about 2009, did you also explore running in the Republican primary for Senate in Louisiana?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury a little about that?
In 2009, let's see, I got an email from a friend saying, "Did you know about this? There is a guy in Louisiana." First, it came out at me as this person is using your name, your trademark name, and your image to promote himself. She was actually a little bit wrong. It was a draft Stormy campaign, and it was to go against the Republican David Vitter, Senator David Vitter. And I got really mad and basically got a hold of the guy. His name was Brian Welsh, and went after him to stop using my name and image to promote himself. But it wasn't to promote himself. It was to bring the attention to this candidate, the Republican candidate in Louisiana, who was running on a platform of who was anti-women and who was trying to shut down reproductive rights and sex education in schools and Planned Parenthood. Meanwhile, he got caught doing some unsavory things, and he had no intention of making me the senator that I was helping to bring attention. I jumped on board, and basically was saying that I was a better choice than this guy. But I dropped out. I never wanted to actually move back to Louisiana, and I didn't want to establish residency. I made a lot more money doing the job that I was doing at the time, which made for some fun campaign slogans I would have loved to have used, but David Vitter would never actually. He wouldn't debate me.
So just to clarify, so was the platform that you were interested in running on was to promote sex education and women's reproductive rights?
Correct.
And if you had run, you would be running as a Republican, correct?
Correct.
I would like to now direct your attention to July of 2006. Were you working at a celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe at the time?
Yes.
And for whom were you working at the time?
I was still under contract with Wicked Pictures, the adult film company.
Contract meaning you were both a director and a writer and also an actress?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were you and others from Wicked Entertainment doing at this golf tournament in Lake Tahoe in July of 2006?
So Wicked sponsors one of the holes on the golf course, which, yes, I know it's very funny. We are an adult film company sponsoring one of the holes. And we had a table in the gift room where celebrities would come through, get a gift bag, check out the products, pose for photos, and that's pretty common in any sort of event. They usually have a gift room, and even award shows have these. It's very common.
So you went with others from your company to promote the company?
Right. It was myself, the owner of the company, a couple of the other staff from the company, and some of the contract girls and the players would come around. You would stay at your hole that had the company's logo, and you would give them water and towels and take a photo. And then later the next day or whatever, the evening, they would go to the gift rooms.
And did you meet Donald Trump on the golf course at that celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe how you encountered him on the golf course?
It was a very brief encounter. The players were playing. They came through very quickly. We met every person who was in the golf tournament at that moment, and they came through. Obviously, they would take their shot. I would say hello and introduce myself to them. I introduced myself, the company, and the other contract girls, not just to Mr. Trump, but every player that came through, gave them water, posed for a picture. It was a very brief encounter on the course.
Do you recall, if at all, what you discussed with Mr. Trump on the golf course at that time?
It wasn't very much. So, the owner of the company was like, this is my contract girl, Jessica, and this is my contract star, the director, Stormy Daniels. And that's when he acted like, oh, you actually direct too? You must be the smart one. And there is a picture, and then they moved on.
And what did you know about Mr. Trump at the time, if anything?
Well, he was obviously a golfer, and he had a television show that I'd never seen called Celebrity Apprentice or The Apprentice, and he had done some reality TV things.
Do you recall what the reality TV things were that you knew about at the time?
He did a lot of cameos and things like that. I definitely remember seeing movies, commercials, or whatever, and something for wrestling, which I am from Louisiana. It's a big deal.
How old were you at the time?
27.
And did you know his approximate age, or could you tell his approximate age at the time?
I don't know his age. I knew he was probably old or older than my father.
So with that, how old was your father at the time?
So, 60?
Did you see Mr. Trump again inside the gift room that you mentioned previously?
Yes.
And could you just describe that encounter in the gift room briefly?
Sure. Like I mentioned, everybody came through. There were so many photos with the girls, with all the celebrities that came through that day. He did remember us from the golf course. He talked to all of the girls. He remembered me specifically, that I was the smart one. He asked for a DVD. We did have a DVD. We had our adult films there. He specifically asked I heard. At the time was that was out, that I had both. Well, all three, written, directed, and starred in. And that was the movie called Three Wishes. So I made sure that he got that one. We talked very briefly. Then I saw him talking to his security, but I didn't know that. It was his security then at the time. I thought maybe it was his friend. I saw him talking to another gentleman that was with him. And then he said that he came back and said that Mr. Trump would like to know if I would like to have dinner with him.
Before we get to that, you also took a picture with Mr. Trump inside the golf room?
Yes.
I'm sorry, inside the gift room?
The gift room, yes.
Did you take pictures with other celebrities or other folks that were coming through?
Yes. Pretty much every celebrity that came through, we took photos of.
Do you see Mr. Trump in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you just point him out and indicate an article of clothing that he is wearing?
Navy blue jacket, second at the table.
Indicating the defendant, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned a photo that you took with Mr. Trump, is that right? Officer, I am handing you a thumb drive, Miss Daniels. I am handing you a thumb drive that contains 4 photos.
Okay.
Marked as People's Exhibits 226, 227, 228A, and 229A for identification. Have you previously reviewed the photos that are contained on that thumb drive?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because it has my initials on the tag.
And the date as well?
Yes.
Thank you. I am going to ask to please put up, just for the witness, the court and the parties, People's Exhibit 226 for identification. It will be on your screen in a minute.
I have.
Do you recognize what's depicted in this photo?
Yeah.
What is depicted in the photo?
It is a photo of myself and Mr. Trump in the gift room.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of what you and Mr. Trump looked like at the golf tournament inside of the gift room in July of 2006?
Of course, yes.
I offer it in evidence, Your Honor. People's Exhibit 226.
No objection.
226 is accepted into evidence.
Now, who took that photo of you that day, if you recall?
It was a photographer who was working for Wicked. His name was Hal.
And in that picture, what do you see Mr. Trump wearing, including a hat and his shirt?
He's wearing a yellow collared polo-styled shirt with a golf logo, and a red hat with a matching logo.
Can we now, so actually in evidence, can we now show People's 227 in evidence?
Exhibit is displayed to the court.
I am sorry, I haven't offered it yet.
Take it down, please.
Can you just show it to the witness and the parties and counsel and the judge, of course? My apologies. Is this one of the photos that were viewed on the thumb drive?
Yes, it is.
Do you recognize what's depicted in this photo?
Yes.
What is it?
A photo of Mr. Trump at the golf course.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of what Mr. Trump looked like to you the first time you met him on the golf course at the tournament in July of 2006?
Yes, it is.
I offer People's 227 in evidence, Your Honor.
No objection.
227 is accepted into evidence.
Now you can display it. Thank you. Now, what is Mr. Trump wearing in this photo?
The same yellow shirt and red hat.
You can take that down. Thank you. Now, you mentioned that after you talked briefly with Mr. Trump in the gift room, that someone, his bodyguard, came over and spoke with you?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury again what his bodyguard told you?
That Mr. Trump was interested in having me join him for dinner.
And what did you say at that time?
Fuck no.
I am sorry.
No, but with an expletive in the front.
Do you know the bodyguard's first name?
It's Keith.
Did he introduce himself as Keith?
Yes, as Keith, yes.
Did you know his last name at the time?
I did not. At the time, I did not know.
Do you know now what's his last name?
Yes. Schiller.
At the time he gave you his first name?
Yes.
Did Keith give you his cell phone number at the time?
Yes.
And how did he give you his cell phone number?
He actually took my number.
Did he ask you for your number?
He asked for my number, and I gave him my number, and then he messaged me, and I saved it.
In other words, you saved his cell phone number in your phone.
Yes.
Did you create a contact in your phone for Keith in July of 2006 when he texted you that contact?
Yes.
Can we show just to the witness now People's Exhibit 229A for identification, just to the witness, the parties, and to the court? Is this also one of the photos that you reviewed on the thumb drive?
Yes, it is.
Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
It is a photo of my phone and the contact on it.
And is it a particular photo from your phone of the contact for Keith?
Yes, it is.
Now, do you notice that the phone number for Keith is redacted to show only the last 4 digits of his number?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to also review and compare it against the original contact in your phone with the full numbers?
Yes.
Aside from the redactions, is it exactly the same?
Yes, it is a match.
I now offer People's Exhibit 229A in evidence, Your Honor.
No objection.
Was that 228 or 229?
It was actually 229A. We are jumping a little. We will get back to 228. I apologize.
Okay, accepted into evidence.
Tell us what that contact shows.
It says, it is saved under the name Keith Trump. That I put Trump because I didn't know his last name when I saved it. And then the phone number that he texted me from that I saved.
And in listing it in your phone as Keith Trump, you said you didn't know his last name. Why did you put the name Trump there?
I know a lot of people named Keith, and I wanted to make sure I knew which Keith it was. And because I didn't know his last name, at least I knew who he worked for. I do that a lot. Put the name, it's stupid, or I put where they're from.
Was it the fact that he worked for Mr. Trump that you put the last name Trump in your phone?
Correct.
Do you still have Keith's contact in your phone to this day?
Yes.
Now, after you left the golf tournament, did you speak with anyone else about the dinner invitation from Mr. Trump that Keith extended to you?
Yes.
Who did you discuss it with?
Immediately, my then publicist. His name was Mike. He was the first, and I think the only one that I immediately talked to about it.
And could you tell us a little bit about the conversation with Mike and what it led you to end up doing?
So I was scheduled to have a dinner or go to dinner with everyone from the company that I worked for, and I really didn't want to go to that dinner. There was a couple of other people at the dinner that I didn't want to be around, catfight and stuff. And so I said, well, I can go to this, not that I ever would. And he said, wait, this is amazing. You totally should. What better excuse do you have to get out of this dinner than that you are going to have dinner with Donald Trump? If nothing else, you will get a big story and be good to get you out of this dinner. He said, I think you should go. It will make for a great story. He is a business guy, like what could possibly go wrong? That was his words to me.
Did he persuade you that it would be good for your career?
Yes, he implied. He said at the very least he could probably have some interesting advice. At the best, maybe he can get you a pilot with an agent or something like that.
Did you end up going to his hotel, Mr. Trump's hotel, to have dinner with him?
I did.
How did that come about?
Keith messaged me. I don't remember who messaged first. I messaged back and forth with Keith and set it up to arrange for me to go across town to where Mr. Trump was staying. It was not the same hotel I was staying at, and I meet him for dinner.
Do you recall what hotel Mr. Trump was staying at?
I believe it was Haraz. It was not the same one as me.
How did you get to the hotel? How did you travel to the hotel?
So I originally was going to work. I set out to do that and realized that I had made a poor footwear decision, and that choice, and actually ended up meeting with a friend of mine about halfway, talking to her, and then I took a car the rest of the way.
Did you indicate to your friend that you were going to have dinner with Mr. Trump?
Yes.
Can you describe, do you know approximately what time you arrived at Harrah's Hotel that night?
I was in the car, I believe, at sunset.
Can you describe when you got to the hotel, arriving at the hotel, and going inside?
Yes. So I arrived, I went upstairs. Keith had given me very specific instructions to take a certain elevator up to the penthouse floor. It was the only way to get there, I guess. And so I did so and went up to that level, and that is where I met Keith. He was waiting for me outside the door.
How did you get into Mr. Trump's hotel suite?
The door was actually open. It was cracked open, and his bodyguard, Keith, was standing right outside the double doors of his room. He said, "Hi, nice evening, you look nice," one or two sentences of pleasantries, and said, "Go on in." The door was already open, so I walked in. He said, "Mr. Trump is there, waiting for you."
You're going to have to slow down a little bit for the court reporter. What were your expectations in going to meet him that night at the hotel room?
I didn't really have any expectations other than Keith had said, "Just come up here, meet up here, and then you guys can go downstairs together to one of the hotel had lots of really nice restaurants. So we would just go down and have dinner." That was my only expectation, that I would have to have dinner, and that I didn't want to with somebody else.
Can you describe the first room that you saw when you entered the hotel suite?
Inside the room?
Yes, the first room you entered when you entered the penthouse.
It wasn't really a room. It was like a foyer. A foyer.
What did it look like?
It was just like a little area, round shape, black and white tiled floor in the center, a big, beautiful wooden table. It looked very heavy, like a mahogany or something super fancy, with a big flower arrangement and a light above it. It was very, very nice.
Did you mention anything about the floor?
The black and white tile?
Did you mention that? I might have missed it. I apologize. Now, describe, if you would, where you first encountered Mr. Trump inside of the hotel suite.
It was right there inside the doorway by the table with the flowers. And I called his name. I said, "Hello." And he came from one of the main areas of the hotel suite.
What did you notice? What was he wearing at the time when he came to greet you?
Yes. He was wearing silk or satin pajamas, like two-piece pajamas, that I immediately made fun of him for and said, "Does Mr. Hefner know you stole his pajamas?"
Who were you referring to when you said Mr. Hefner?
Hugh Hefner, the owner of Playboy magazine.
Was that someone known for wearing pajamas out in public?
It was sort of his signature uniform. He wore satin pajamas all the time.
What did Mr. Trump do when you said that?
I told him to go change, and he obliged very politely.
Did he come back at some point in a different outfit?
Yes.
What was he wearing?
Just a dress shirt and some dress pants.
And what were you doing when you went to change?
Just kind of walking around, looking around the suite. It actually was very quick how fast he changed. It was a very, very big suite. You know, when you say hotel room, people often think of a hotel room that we are used to. And when you walk in there, when you walk in, there's a bed, a dresser, and there's, connotation that people have their heads when they say hotel room. But this hotel was 3 times the size of my apartment.
What sort of rooms did you see in the hotel room?
You walk in and...
My apologies. What did you see in the suite?
Suite? So you walk in this foyer that had a gigantic flower arrangement, as I said, and then you go into the living room area. That was also bigger than the living room in my first 3 houses, and it was carpeted. And like I said, a full-sized couch and chair and TV, and over to the left was like a bar thing, I guess. And then another little room that had a table and chairs. It was almost a full-size dining room table with full size. Some people call it a buffet. Some people call it a credenza, depending on where you're from. It was all heavy, beautiful furniture. There was another room over that way. I didn't go into that room. It was a very big and beautiful room. It was nicer than any of my friends' apartments.
When Mr. Trump came back in the suite, you said he went to put on a dress shirt. Where did the two of you go at that point?
To the table, I guess the dining room table. The table with the chairs would be where you would have dinner.
Did you both sit down at that dining room table?
Yes.
Where was he sitting and where were you sitting?
He was sitting across from me with his back against the wall, and the buffet credenza was behind him. And I was sitting directly across from him in the main area, the living room bar area behind me.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Trump say about talking a while before dinner?
It was a little bit early. I do remember it wasn't even dark outside just yet. It was still some light coming through the windows. And he said, it was a bit early. Would you mind just talking for a bit to get to know each other? And then we can go down or we can stay up or whatever. I said, yeah, absolutely. So I took a seat and we started talking.
So what were some of the things that you discussed with him? First, I'm going to ask you, did you talk to him about how you grew up?
Yes.
Tell the jury a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's getting to know you. It's pleasantries. Where are you from? What's your family like? Just all of the entry conversation kind of stuff. I told him where I was from. I told him, where I grew up. He asked me about my family, all of those things. Where I went to school, did I go to college? Where did I live at that time? Did I have any children? I did not. Was I married? I wasn't then. Did I have a boyfriend? No, I didn't at the time. Just things like that. Just things like to do generally to get to know you sort of things. And I don't remember the exact order of everything we discussed. I just remember the conversations.
Let me just ask a follow-up question. Did you talk to him at all about the conditions of your childhood?
Yes, absolutely.
That it was a difficult time growing up?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
That answer is stricken.
A reminder, you are listening to a reading of the transcript of the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, indictment number 71543/2023. To ensure future court transcript readings of this and other cases, we kindly ask you to visit everylegalword.com and support this cause. We now resume this reading where we left off.
I am moving on to another question. Did he also ask about your work?
Yes.
Tell the jury a little bit about that.
He had asked how I got involved in the adult entertainment business. I told him that story about how I started dancing and posing for magazines. He was very interested in how I would siege from being a porn star to writing and directing. I did have to immediately lay that misconception that so many have that. Yes, some adult films have real scripts and are real movies, not just, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pizza Boy, which is very offensive to me. So I did explain to him like different types of adult films. Some are scripted, some budgets are $5,000, and some budgets are 250. I explained that there is such budget range and how I got involved in it. He was very interested in a lot of the business aspects of it, which I thought was very cool. He asked questions like, are there any unions? Did you get residuals? How are the people paid? Do you get health insurance? What about testing? Are you worried about STDs? Do you have a doctor on staff? You know, most of the time I'm trying to be very careful and not say bad words. Most of the people who want to talk to me about work, they just want to know the sexy stuff or the dirty stuff, like what's your favorite position, and they want to know the salacious things. There were more very thought out business questions. I can't tell you if I remember someone asking, do we have a union and how to get paid on the testing and how the testing works in the industry. Are we worried about getting pregnant or catching something? So it was a lot of that conversation.
Did he ask about whether you had ever been tested?
Yes, of course. I volunteered it as well. At the time, you'll be tested every 30 days. Today, it's every 14 days. You cannot work unless you have a test. And yes, have you ever had a bad test? A bad test is something positive from something. I said, nope. I can show you my entire record. Nobody in the industry can see anybody's testing. You sort of waive that privilege. But yes, I have every test that I have ever done for the last X amount of years. At the time, it was a month. Now it's twice a month. I never had a bad test. I never tested positive for anything.
Did you talk to him at all about protection, safety?
Yes, a little bit. And I think that's kind of how we segued into safety conversation. He said, aren't you worried about safety? And I was quick to point out that my time in the industry, I chose to work for Wicked Productions because they are the only condom mandatory company.
What does that mean?
Which means that even when I was working, even if a married couple was working together, even if you were going to work with your spouse for a husband and wife, you live together. When you perform on camera for Wicked Productions, you have to use a condom. They are the only condom mandatory company in the adult business.
Is that one of the reasons that you worked there?
Yes. Even when I worked with my husband, I had to use a condom, even though I was allergic to latex, that type of thing. So we were talking about that and stuff like that. So I was like, adult performers are kind of like, I said, like WWE, like wrestling, because I really wanted to ask him about him making.
What did he tell you about that?
Well, he said that he was friends with the owner of the company. I don't know if that was Vince McMahon, and I had seen the things on there about he does stunts like guest spots, not really wrestling on WWE.
Ms. Daniels, if you can just slow down a little bit so the court reporter can get what you're saying.
Did he tell you anything about the scripts with respect to his being in the wrestling with Vince McMahon?
Oh, yeah, I made him. The little scenario or a plot that he was a part of at the time was some sort of, I don't remember if it was a bet or whatever, but the point was that if he lost that, he would have to shave his head, or Vince Mahan got to shave his head. And Donald Trump has always been so famous for his do. And so I said, well, what are you going to do if you lose? You do not have the head designed to be without hair. Some of us look good bald, some of us don't. I don't think you are that man. And he said, oh, no, no, no. I agree with you. All of that stuff is predetermined. And, you know, I remember he used the word set up, but it's predetermined in the script that we know the outcome in advance.
Let me ask you, at some point, was there a very brief discussion about his wife, Melania?
Yes, very brief.
Did this occur in the context of you viewing a picture that included his wife?
Yes, he showed me a few pictures of things, and I said, oh, what about your wife?
What did he say?
I actually said, she is very beautiful. What about your wife? And he said, he said, don't worry about that. We are actually don't even sleep in the same room.
Did there come a time during the discussion with him that he discussed being on the cover of some of his magazines?
Of course.
And tell us about that.
He would ask me questions and then not let me finish the answer. He kept cutting me off, and it was almost like he wanted to one-up me, which was just really hilarious when you think about it. He just wanted to talk about himself, and he said, have you seen my new magazines? Well, of course you couldn't have seen it. I have a copy. So he pulled out a magazine. I don't know if it was not released yet or just released that he was on the cover of. It was not like I made a habit of reading financial magazines. I was just 27 years old stripper, but yeah.
And what happened with respect to that discussion about magazines?
At this point, I pretty much had enough of his arrogance and cutting me off and still not getting my dinner. So I decided someone should take him on. So I said, are you always this rude, arrogant, and pompous? You don't even know how to have a conversation. And I was pretty much nasty. I snapped. And he seemed to be taken aback. And I said, someone should spank you with that. That's the only interest I have in that magazine. Otherwise, I'm leaving.
What happened?
I don't think he thought I would do it. So he rolled it up and gave me the look that he dared me to do it. So now I kind of had to.
So what did you do?
So I took it from him and said, turn around, and I swatted him.
Where'd you swat him?
Right on the butt.
Right after that, did you continue to sit down and talk?
Yes. And he was much more polite.
Did you have a discussion with him about The Apprentice?
Yes. I think, like I said, we talked about numerous things. We talked about the golf course in Scotland, which to me was very interesting, about the environment that was there, and we talked about travel. Like I said, there was nothing weird about the conversations, except that it wasn't weird. It was like business questions and thought out questions and thought out answers. And how did you come up with ideas for my scripts and things like that? And it was at that point that he got really quiet and he was thinking, and he told me that he had an idea that I should go on his television show.
Which show?
The Apprentice.
Was it The Apprentice?
I don't remember the TV show. The Apprentice, I assume it's like a celebrity apprentice. I don't know. The Apprentice. And I said that there's no way that they would ever there is no way that NBC would ever let an adult actress on television. And I said, even you don't have that much power. And he said he did. He said, you remind me of my daughter because she is smart and blonde and beautiful, and people underestimate her as well. And the way he framed it did actually make perfect sense, because he is all about like PR things, the spin. And he was like, that will really shake things up. And you can go on the show and you can prove that you're not just a dumb bimbo. You are more than people think that you would be, and get a lot of attention for having this crazy idea.
Did he say anything else about The Apprentice and what might happen if you went on?
Right. And so I was, first of all, there was no way that's going to happen. I knew about his ego and knew even you don't have that much power, thinking that would also make him want to do it. I was like, people underestimate women, especially people in the adult industry, when they see blonde hair and big boobs, and I'm a good writer and director. And he said, this is your chance to have somebody see that part of you. I was like, well, but I'm not a business person. I don't have that kind of education. Like, there's no way I could win. What if you know? And he said, you don't have to win. You just have to show who you are. I said, what if I lose on the first episode? That also makes me look bad. People will take that and run with it. You are just an idiot like all the others thought you were. And then he said, what if I tell you what the challenges are?
What did you understand that to mean?
He said, we can kind of like on the wrestling thing, if you know what they are, obviously I can't have you win, but I can. I am in control. I know what's going to happen. I can give you some advantage to make sure you at least make a good showing. I said, all right, we will if you make that happen.
Did he suggest that if you did get on The Apprentice, what might happen with other aspects of your career?
Just that people might be able to take me more seriously. I wasn't just an airhead. That I could finally, he knew, and we talked essentially about what I really wanted to do, and that is to be taken seriously as a writer and director. And at the same time, I hadn't done any mainstream writing or directing, and that's still what I wanted to do. I wanted to write and direct film and music videos, things like that. Nothing against the adult entertainment business. I have no shame. That's who I am. But I also wanted to direct other bigger things. They have bigger budgets and bigger catering. And he was like, this is your chance for somebody to see you and maybe give you that kind of opportunity. So he pushed it as a win-win.
Did he ask you about any of the other people that you worked with at Wicked Pictures?
Of course. He asked me multiple times in the conversation, like, who are you? And, is everybody in the industry friends? Or do you all hate each other? Do you love each other? Do you hook up off camera? I don't want to use the word hook up. Do you sleep with others off camera? Do you have any friends here? Well, the girls from Wicked are there. And he said, what about your friends here from Wicked? Of course, I shut down that immediately, because the whole reason I was having dinner there is because I didn't want to have dinner with one of them.
Did you call another colleague of yours during this conversation from Wicked?
No, I didn't.
Not from Wicked. I apologize. Did you call another friend of yours?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. I bumped into a friend of mine that was in town. She was actually one of my neighbors as well. I had no idea that she was in Lake Tahoe. She was not there for the golf tournament. I literally walked into her while I was walking down the street with another girl from the industry getting a tattoo at a tattoo parlor. And as I was walking, she called my name. Her name is Alana, and she is who I bumped into on my way over there. And the one I told I was on my way to see him. And I know she didn't believe me. So when he was like, do you know anyone else? I also had two reasons for calling Alana. One, because I'm telling the truth. I am with Donald Trump. And two, he asked me to call one of my friends, and I didn't want to call my colleague from Wicked.
Didn't you end up calling your friend Alana from the hotel room?
Yes.
Did you put her on speaker?
Yeah.
What, if any, conversation did you and Mr. Trump have with Alana on speaker?
He said hello, which meant that I won that bet. I know she didn't believe me, and they talked, and she said, what are you guys doing? And he said, we're just hanging out. Why don't you come over and hang out with us? And I can't remember what kind of excuse she made. She said, yeah, I will call you back in a little bit or whatever, and she didn't. Time just kept going by. I called her and nothing, and we didn't get a good. I called her a few more times and it went to voicemail.
When you called her and had her on speakerphone, did Mr. Trump ask her to come over and join you as well?
Yes.
Approximately how long in total were you talking in the suite with Mr. Trump, sitting, as you said, in the dining room type area?
Well, close to 2 hours. It was a long time.
Now, at that point, meaning after all of that discussion that you had just described, did you sense any red flags or a reason that you were concerned about being there?
No.
At some point, did you need to use the restroom?
Yes.
And did you tell...
This is a good time to take a break.
Yes, it is, Judge.
Let's take our morning recess. Please remember all of my instructions as you step out.
All rise.
Whereupon the jurors are excused. Please be seated. You can step down. Whereupon the witness is excused. Please approach. Discussion is held at sidebar on the record. I understand that your client is upset at this point, but he is cursing audibly and is shaking his head visually, and that's contemptuous. It has the potential to intimidate the witness, and the jury can see that.
I will talk to him.
So I'm speaking to you here at the bench because I don't want to embarrass him.
I will talk to him.
You need to speak to him. I won't tolerate that.
I will talk to him.
One time I noticed when Ms. Daniels was testifying about rolling up the magazine and he presumably smacking your client, and after that point he shook his head and looked down. And later, I think he was looking at you, Mr. Blanche. Later, when we were talking about The Apprentice, at that point he again uttered a vulgarity and looked at you this time. Please talk to him at the break.
Yes, I will.
Short recess is taken. Case on trial continued. Just two things. Mr. Blanche, did you speak to your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Hoffinger, I think the degree of detail that we're going into here is just unnecessary. We don't need to know the details of the conversations, what the suite looked like, or anything like that. When she comes back to the stand, you can move along more quickly.
Okay.
Let's get the witness. Welcome back, Ms. Daniels.
Thank you.
Let's get the jury.
All rise. Jury entering.
Please be seated. Ms. Hoffinger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, before we broke, Miss Daniels, we were talking about the discussions you had in the hotel suite. Did there come a time that you needed to use the restroom?
Yes.
Can you tell us just about that?
I'd been there for quite a while. I drank a couple of bottles of water, which is all we were drinking. It was water. And I needed to use the ladies' room. So I asked if that was possible. So I was instructed to go through the living room and to the bedroom and to help myself to the facilities.
When you say you were directed, who directed you?
Mr. Trump.
Can you describe, you said you went through a bedroom to get to the bathroom?
Yes, I went out of the dining room area, through the living room, through a bedroom, into what I assume is the master bedroom. It was very large, beautiful bathroom.
What did you see inside the bathroom?
So I walked through the bathroom. I did notice that the bed was unmade, but there was no personal items around. And I entered the bathroom. I went into the separate area where the toilet actually was and used the bathroom, came out, and was washing my hands and touching up my lipstick. I did notice someone had obviously been using the restroom. There were towels and stuff that were open, and there was a leather or like a leather-looking toiletry bag on the counter with products and stuff in it, which,
What do you remember about what was inside?
I did look. I'm not proud of it. I wondered what is in here, and I noticed the toiletry the items were Old Spice and Pert Plus. I thought that was both amusing and odd, and a manicure set, which was gold, tweezers, and all gold things. I finished washing my hands, touched up my makeup, and then I walked out of the bathroom.
Did you try to call anybody while you were inside the bathroom? Alana was not answering her phone. In fact, I wish I had a cell phone camera. If I did, I definitely would have taken a picture of that, even thought, whoa, this is crazy. Did you try to call her while you were inside the bathroom?
I believe so. Her phone was going straight to voicemail. At this point, she wanted no part of whatever I had going on.
What happened when you left the bathroom?
When I came out of the bathroom, I expected to exit, go around the bed, and back out where I had been sitting and talking and hopefully say, okay, time to go. I've been here for a long time. That was actually when I realized how long I'd been there. And when I opened the bathroom door to come out, Mr. Trump had come into the bathroom and was on the bed, basically between myself and the exit.
What was he wearing at the time?
His boxer shorts and a t-shirt.
What was your reaction to seeing him like that?
At first, I was just startled, like jump scare. I wasn't expecting someone to be there, especially minus a lot of clothing. That's when I had that moment where I felt the room spin in slow motion. I felt the blood basically leave my hands and my feet, and almost like if you stand up too fast and everything kind of spinned. That happened too. Then I just thought, oh my, what did I misread to get here? Because the intention was pretty clear. Somebody stripped down in their underwear and posing on the bed, like waiting for you.
What happened when you came out of the bathroom? Did he stay on the bed?
When I exited, he was just on the bed, like this.
What happened after that?
And I went to step around. I laughed nervously and, tried to make a joke of it and stepped around to leave, even though I was moving like I was in a fun house, like slow motion. I thought to myself, great, I put myself in this bad situation. Like, what did I do? How did I misread everything? He stood up between me and the door, not in a threatening manner. He didn't come at me. He didn't rush at me. He didn't put his hands on me and nothing like that. I said, I gotta go. He said, I thought you were getting somewhere. We were talking and I thought that you were serious about what you wanted. If you ever want to get out of that trailer park, basically, I was offended because I never lived in a trailer park.
Sustained. Move along.
You were both standing up at this time?
Yes.
And what happened next, briefly?
I just think I blacked out. I was not drugged. I never insinuated that I was on drugs. I was not drunk. I never said anything of that sort. I just don't remember.
I object.
Overruled.
Did you at some point...
Please approach. Tell me what your objection is.
She's making it sound like she was drugged.
She said she wasn't drugged.
She said she's dizzy, she blacked out.
I got the impression she was saying she wasn't drugged. She's not suggesting she was drugged. I sustained your objection. If you want, I got the impression, do you want to consult with the other lawyers?
I can clarify if you would like.
I think it should be clarified. She is not saying she was not.
Sure, I can do that.
The objection is sustained.
I want to clarify and ask you to slow down so the reporter can understand you. Were you saying you were not drugged in any way? Is that correct?
Correct.
You had not had any alcohol in any way?
Correct.
Okay, and that's what you were trying to convey?
Yes.
So, he was standing up and you were standing up. What were your relative heights?
I am 5'6", 5'7", and I don't know how tall he was. Definitely several inches taller than and much larger.
But you said you didn't feel threatened, is that right?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Did you feel threatened by him?
No, not physically. Although I did note there was a bodyguard right outside the door. That was an imbalance of power for sure. He was bigger and blocking the way, but I mean, I was not threatened verbally or physically.
Can you briefly describe, at some point, did you end up on the bed having sex?
Yes.
Can you very briefly describe where you had sex with him?
The next thing I know, I was on the bed, somehow on the opposite side of the bed from where we had been standing. I had my clothes and shoes off. I believe my bra, however, was still on. We were in the missionary position.
Objection.
Sustained.
Without describing the position, do you remember how your clothes got off?
No.
Is that a memory that has not come back to you?
Objection.
Sustained.
You don't at this point remember, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you end up having sex with him on the bed?
Yes.
And do you know, withdrawn, do you have a recollection of feeling something unusual that you have a memory of?
Objection.
Sustained.
What, if anything, do you remember anything other than the fact that you had sex on the bed?
I was staring at the ceiling. I didn't know how I got there. I made note like I was trying to think about anything other than what was happening there.
Objection.
Sustained.
I move to strike.
Answer is stricken.
Did you touch his skin?
Yes.
Objection.
Sustained. Sustained.
Was he wearing a condom?
No.
Was that concerning to you?
Yes.
Did you say anything about it?
No.
Why not?
I didn't say anything at all.
Do you recall how it ended, the sex?
Yes.
Was it brief?
Yes.
Do you remember at some point getting dressed?
Yes.
And tell us what you recall about getting dressed.
Sitting on the end of the bed, noticing that it was completely dark outside now, and that it was really hard to get my shoes on. My hands were shaking so hard. I had on tiny little, they were strappy gold heels with little tiny buckles, and my hands were shaking so hard. I was having a hard time getting dressed. He said, "Oh, great. Let's get together again, honey bunch. We were great together." I just wanted to leave.
Did you say no at any time during sex with him?
No,
Why not?
because I didn't say anything at all.
Did you notice afterwards a DVD on the side table?
Yes, the DVD I'd given him earlier in the gift bag from the show was on the nightstand that I signed.
When you were leaving and you went to leave, what, if anything, did you do or say?
He said, "We have to get together again soon." He went to kiss me goodbye. I just left fast as I could, That was it.
Did he say anything to you about talking again?
Yes, he said we should get together again. We were fantastic together, and I want to get you on the show. And that was it. He didn't give me anything. He didn't offer to pay or anything or a cell phone number or anything like that.
Did he ask you to keep your encounter with him confidential?
No.
Did he express any concern at that point about his wife finding out?
No.
Did you end up having dinner in his room that night?
No.
You said it was dark out when you left?
Yes.
And do you recall how you got back to your hotel?
It was a cab.
A reminder, you are listening to a reading of the transcript of the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, indictment number 71543/2023. To ensure future court transcript readings of this and other cases, we kindly ask you to visit everylegalword.com and support this cause. We now resume this reading where we left off.
After that night, did you tell anybody else about what happened?
Yes.
Just give us a sense of the people that you told and what you told them.
I told very few people that we had actually had sex because I felt ashamed that I didn't stop it, that I didn't say no. A lot of people would just assume, they would make jokes out of it. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't want to hear about it or assume that I was a paid prostitute, which I wasn't. So I told very few people. I didn't want it to get back to anybody that I was dating.
Objection.
Sustained.
There are some details that you said you still don't remember.
Yes.
Did there come a time some years after the encounter with Mr. Trump that you remembered some additional details about what happened that you hadn't remembered earlier?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Objection.
Overruled.
So most of everything I said, I have said consistently every interview in the book.
Just to direct you, were there certain things that you always remembered?
Yes.
About what happened in the room?
Yes.
You always remembered that you had sex with him, for example?
Yes.
Objection.
Please approach. Your objection is to leading.
The objection to leading, but I am also objecting to the witness just going off on tangents.
Ms. Hoffinger is doing some leading. I will sustain your objection as to leading. But I think that it is what Ms. Hoffinger is trying to do. She's trying to direct her. I think that might be the safer course.
Your Honor, I understand that. The problem is that she is also leading her through a set of things. What do you remember? And obviously the problem with leading is suggest answers sometimes. So I understand that. Maybe if Your Honor could direct the witness to just answer the questions.
I think that she has answered my questions. I think asking her to answer my questions is not necessarily probative. But I would say I have been leading her to try to be cognizant of the judge's decision. I have had a chance to talk to her about it. I was trying to lead her. Second, Miss Nichelis has made it very clear her story has changed and is going to. So I need to elicit there were certain things she always remembered, but she did have an experience in 2019 when she saw the movie Bombshell that caused her to remember some additional details. That is what I am trying to bring out.
What was the Bombshell?
It was a movie about Roger Ailes. That's how she remembered what he said to her when she came out of the bathroom, which was about the trailer park.
She did mention trailer park, and that's why I objected. That is not necessary.
Sure. We need some finality in this case.
Okay, I will try to direct her a little bit around that. I don't need to ask the last question, which was, were there things you always remembered, which I can go straight to the Bombshell movie, what happened, how she remembers additional details.
It goes to the thing that she said about the trailer park. I have to cross-examine her. But we believe that this is now introduced, and what the prosecution is going to do is introduce even more this whole theory of inappropriate power being used, and when she said it was undue influence being used, an imbalance.
I think we need to stay the course. Avoid anything that is going to get us into trouble. I will let you ask the question again. If she doesn't answer directly, I will ask her to answer the question.
The Bombshell stuff?
Not coming in.
You want me to not ask the question?
Don't ask it.
Can I on redirect if they have question on cross?
Yes.
Miss Daniels, did you see Mr. Trump again in Tahoe the next day?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
The next day I met him, this time at my hotel at a nightclub restaurant bar downstairs.
What was going on in your hotel that night?
It was all part of the same event, a charity event. They did a silent auction, They had cocktails, however, whatever. I met him at one of the nightclubs there.
So that was part of your participating in the things that Wicked was doing for this golf tournament?
Yes.
You met him there. Where was it? Did you say it was in the lobby?
The nightclub, a bar, like in the lobby of the hotel. It was a nightclub.
Did anyone call you before going there to indicate that Mr. Trump was going to be there?
Yes. Keith said he wanted to talk to me with me again, and would I be willing to meet him? This time it was in public, and I said yes. And I arrived. He was sitting at a booth in the nightclub. It was dark. There was loud music, drinking. He wasn't drinking, but it was a bar. He was with his friend and bodyguard.
And when you say his friend, do you know who his friend was?
Ben Roethlisberger from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Did Mr. Trump say hello to you and introduce you?
Yes.
What did he say?
He introduced me as his little friend Stormy to Big Ben, the football player, and we sat down. I remember clearly because I talked to Ben into letting me try his new Super Bowl ring, and 2 of my fingers could fit into it.
When you say Big Ben, is that how Mr. Trump referred to Mr. Roethlisberger?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you discuss at the table with Mr. Trump or Mr. Roethlisberger?
It was really loud. I mean, it was very, very brief. They were talking. I think they'd been having a conversation when I arrived, and they kind of continued it out of earshot. They were whispering to each other. Then he said he did. Then he said he did come back to me. Hey, everything about our idea, I think it's good. I got to get back home and figure out how to get you on the show. He took a call. He was very busy. He left and said, "You know, I'm going to have you." He said, "You know, I'm going to have Ben walk you back to your room, and Ben, would you mind seeing her up?" It was very short, maybe 10 minutes that I was there.
And Ben walked you up to your room?
Yes.
Did you leave Lake Tahoe the next day?
I believe it was the next day, yes.
And do you recall the first person you did tell about having that sexual encounter with Mr. Trump?
I think it was Keith. Not the same Keith. Keith, my friend. I rented his house. He was one of my best friends. He was like my dad and makeup artist, Christine.
Did you tell either of them all of the details of what occurred in the room, or just some of them?
Most of them.
And were there others that you told about some of it?
Sure.
Did you tell those folks, did you tell them all of what happened?
There were several people that I told. I told lots and lots of people that I had told that I had gone to his room and that I had met him. It wasn't a secret at all. I told scores of people that. The sex part, I told very few people, like close people, like Keith, who is a photographer, best friend, family, and my makeup artist, who is my best friend and confidant. Her name is Christine, and my assistant at the time, her name is Yoli.
Did Mr. Trump call you after that encounter in July of 2006 in Tahoe?
Yes.
Tell us about that. How often would he call you?
He would call on average once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes not at all for 3 weeks. He would always call. I was working a lot at the time. I was shooting a lot. I was directing photo shoots for magazines or whatever. I always put him on speakerphone. We thought it was funny. I put him on speakerphone, and dozens of people heard me on the phone with him. It was not a secret. My entire crew and cast, especially my cameraman and makeup artist. He always definitely loaded the call with an update or non-update if he didn't have one for The Apprentice, and always talked about when we could get together again. Did I miss him? He always called me Honey Bunch. And when I was going to be in New York, did I need anything? He was working on The Apprentice thing. He would say, I don't have a chance to talk to him.
When you put him on speakerphone, did you tell him he was on speaker?
No.
Did he ever tell you during those calls that you should keep it confidential and not tell anyone?
No.
Why did you continue to take his calls?
Because I did tell my publicist, Mike, about the apprentice thing, and he took pride in telling me. He told me to go to that dinner.
Ms. Daniels, listen to the question and answer the question.
To go and meet him was good.
Why did you continue to take his calls?
My publicist thought it was good to continue my conversations with him about the television show.
At some point, did Mr. Trump give you his work number?
He gave me his assistant's number.
And did he give that to you over the phone or in person?
Over the phone.
And what did he tell you about that number that he gave you?
It was a person who worked closest with him. Her name was Rona. I remember writing it down on a notepad in my house while I was on the phone. If I ever need to get a hold of him, she would know how.
Do you remember approximately when he gave you that phone number?
I know where I was at, what house I was living in. I know it was late summer 2006.
And what did you do with the number when he gave it to you?
I wrote it down on a piece of paper next to my bed and entered it into the phone.
When you say you entered it into your phone, did you put it into your phone contacts?
Yes, sorry.
That's all right. Can we show now, just to the witness, to the court, and the parties, People's Exhibit 228A for identification? Do you recognize that, Miss Daniels?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
That is a picture of Rona's contact in my phone.
And do you notice that the phone number is redacted to show only the last 4 digits of the number?
Yes.
Had you reviewed it and compared it to the original contact without that redaction?
Yes.
Are they exactly the same other than the redaction?
Yes.
Other than the redaction, is that an exact copy of the contact that you entered into your phone for Rona when you received it from Mr. Trump sometime in 2006?
Yes, it is.
I offer People's Exhibit 228A into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
228 is accepted into evidence.
What did the contact read at the time?
The name?
Yes.
D. Trump Rona.
And why did you enter it that way? D. Trump Rona.
Well, I didn't want to type Donald Trump, so I put in Rona. The same thing, I didn't know her last name, so it's kind of like the Keith one. It's how I remember it, what it was for, and if I needed to get a hold of him. That's why his name was first. I needed to get a hold of a woman named Rona.
You can take it down. Now, please show what is in evidence as People's Exhibit 83. Actually, you can show it on all the screens. Thank you. Maybe we can blow it up. Do you see People's 83, a contact that says Stormy Daniels with a mobile phone number?
Yes.
Do you recognize those last 4 digits of the phone number there?
I do.
What are they?
The last 4 digits of my phone.
Have you previously reviewed that exhibit without the redactions?
Yes.
And can you confirm that what is redacted is the rest of your cell phone number?
Yes, it is.
Do you still have the same telephone number that you did back in 2006 and 2007?
Yes.
Thank you. You can take it down. I want to direct your attention to January 17th or so of 2007. Did you meet with Mr. Trump at the launch of his Trump vodka brand at a location in Hollywood, California called Le Doux?
Yes.
How did that come about?
I guess he was having a party for his vodka release party. He reached out and asked me if I would attend.
Did you agree to go?
Yes.
Why did you agree to go?
For the same reason. I wanted to maintain that sort of relationship because the celebrity, the chance to be on The Apprentice was still up in the air, and it would have been a great thing. It would have been great for my career, especially when it was framed as being a writer and a director. It was a public event.
Objection.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
Ms. Daniels, please keep the answer short, listen to the question, and answer the question. The objection is overruled.
Thank you. Did you go alone or with others?
I went with 2 friends.
What were the first names of the 2 friends that went with you?
Just first names.
Yes.
Tara and Evan.
Were there 2 of them, Tara and Evan, among the friends who you had told about some of the details about what had occurred with Mr. Trump?
Some of the details, yes.
When you did you meet up with Mr. Trump when you got there?
Yes. I rode there with my friends, and we immediately walked the red carpet and went to his VIP booth.
Did you meet him at the VIP booth?
Yes.
How did he greet you?
He leaned over and gave me a kiss and shook my friends' hands.
Were there other people around when he greeted you?
Of course, there were hundreds of people there.
Did he appear to be concerned about meeting you there or greeting you?
No.
Did he introduce you to anybody memorable when you were there?
A few people. One of them was his friend Karen.
Did you know Karen's last name?
Not at the time.
Do you know her last name now?
Yes.
What is it?
What is it?
What is it?
McDougal.
Did you know who she was at the time?
I did not.
Now, did you introduce your friends to Mr. Trump as well?
Yes, I did.
About how long were you there?
Between an hour and a half, 2 hours.
And did he ask you to see him again?
Yes. He spent most of the time talking to my friends. Every time I came over, he asked me if I would go back with him that night.
What did you tell him?
I lied and said that I was with my friends. I lied to him and said that we were flying out on a girls' trip out of LAX that night.
Let me direct your attention to a few months later, about March of 2007. Did you visit with Mr. Trump at Trump Tower at about that time?
Yes.
How did that come about?
He said if I ever was in New York that I should stop by and that we should get together. I should see Trump Tower. We could have a meeting about the show. I was here on unrelated business. I was working, I was dancing at a club, and I hit him up. I thought it would be great if I could get him to come to the club and see me, but he instead invited me to his office building. And the same thing, I reached out to Rona as instructed, and my assistant and I went up to the Trump Tower to meet with him.
You said you asked him to come to the show where you were going to be performing?
Right.
Why did you do that?
It was a public place, lots of witnesses.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Was there a reason you thought it would be good for the club if he showed up?
It would be good for the club and safer.
Objection, and move to strike.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
What happened when you got to Trump Tower?
Like, when I walked in,
Yes.
I was greeted warmly. I was expected. They were expecting me, and I went to his office to greet him. My assistant and she was with me.
Did you meet his assistant, Rona, in the reception area upstairs?
Yes.
And were you ushered into his office with your assistant?
Yes.
And did you have a discussion in there with Mr. Trump?
Yes.
And just generally, what was the discussion?
It was very brief. He was very busy. People were in and out. He introduced me to a couple of other people, and I was there when I was there, and he was in a meeting with somebody when I got there. Then he had another meeting come in. It was a gentleman with an accent. It was a very short, it was very sort of rushed. At one point, he did step out and leave us in the office. We took selfies, and he said, I don't have a lot of time. I wanted you to stop by. I wanted to say hi. It was always, I'm still working on the apprentice thing. I got pushed back. I got it. That kind of thing. It was always very brief.
Did he also end up inviting you to another event?
He invited, okay. My assistant loved beauty pageants. He was sort of in the midst of dealing with his upcoming pageant. He offered us tickets if we wanted to go.
Did he arrange for tickets for you to go?
Yes, he did.
Did you end up going to the Miss USA pageant with your assistant?
Yes, at his invitation.
You said it was very brief at Trump Tower?
Yes.
Did he appear to be concerned about anybody seeing you at Trump Tower?
No, he introduced me to everybody. He just seemed busy.
Let me direct your attention now to the Miss USA pageant. How did you end up getting into the pageant?
It was in California. It was in Hollywood. He left tickets under my name at will call for my assistant and I.
Was he there at the time?
He was there, but I didn't see him, or I didn't speak to him. I saw him on stage.
Did you speak to him after the pageant?
A few times.
Now, after the Miss USA pageant, sometime around the summer of 2007, did you meet with him again in LA?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Same way I always did. He would call from New York, from a New York number, or from Keith's number or Rona's number, I guess, and said he was going to be in LA. He had the final information almost all sorted out for the show. Would I meet him again for dinner at his bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel?
Did you end up going to the bungalow?
I did.
And how did you get there?
Mike, who was previously my publicist, we were now dating. He drove me in my car.
And had you told your boyfriend at that time about what exactly had happened in the hotel room with Mr. Trump?
Not the sexual part.
Why not?
Because I was ashamed.
Why did you decide to go meet him at the bungalow?
To speak. Mike did know about the apprentice thing. If I suddenly didn't want to do it, it would be very weird.
Did you meet anyone outside? How did you get into his bungalow?
He gave me specific instructions. The place is kind of complicated to pull up to. His bodyguard, Keith, met me at my car, and Mike stayed in the car. He escorted me through, these back patios to his particular building.
Did you ask your boyfriend to just wait for you?
It was pretty common.
Did you go into the bungalow to meet with Mr. Trump?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about what you discussed with him in the bungalow.
Same sort of thing. He was busy. He was on the phone. When I got there, there were several phone calls. He was watching television. I said, what are we having for dinner? He was watching a documentary. We were talking about the documentary that he was watching about some sailors that got killed by sharks or submarines. He was trying to make sexual advances, putting his hand on my leg, scooting closer, giving me compliments.
What was your response?
I told him I was on my period.
But you told him you did not want to, is that right?
Yes.
Was there more discussion about The Apprentice?
Yes, but a lot less than I thought there would be. No real update.
And about how long did you stay?
2 hours, tops. More than an hour, less than 2.
And what did he say when you were leaving, when you decided to go?
Want to get together again? I missed you. The usual.
Did he on that occasion tell you to keep it confidential and not to tell anyone?
Absolutely not.
Did he appear to be concerned with anybody else finding out that you were there with him?
Absolutely not.
Was that the last time that you saw him in person?
Yes.
And did he call you after this meeting in the bungalow in LA? Did he call you again?
Like that night?
Did he call you another time?
Yes.
Approximately how many times did he call you?
A few more times. One was to tell me that he could not get me on the television show, that he'd been overruled by someone higher up's wife having a problem. He owed it to them to go with their opinion, I guess. And he tried a couple more times, and I did not answer his call. Then I did answer, and it was a New York number. I didn't always know that it was him, so to tell me that he did not know that Jenna Jameson was going to be on the show.
Who is Jenna Jameson?
She's another adult film actress. She wasn't a contestant on the show. Her then fiance or boyfriend at this time was Tito Ortiz, an MMA fighter, and he was on the show. She made a guest appearance and some stuff, and he thought I was going to be mad. I didn't care.
You didn't care at that point?
Nope.
Was that the last time you spoke to him by telephone or in person?
Yes.
And after, did you sort of stop taking calls? How did you know that? Did you know one way or the other whether he called you again?
I think he did a couple of more times. I have no way of knowing for sure. It would be a blocked number or a New York number. I didn't have a lot of people from New York calling.
Did you stop answering those calls?
Yes.
At that point, did you move on with your life?
Absolutely.
For the next 3 years, January of 2008 until about May of 2011 or so, what did your life look like?
It was pretty awesome. I got a raise. I was directing a lot more movies, a lot more mainstream things. That's when I did the 40-Year-Old Virgin and all of those big movies. I started directing music videos. I got married. I had my daughter, became a nationally ranked equestrian with my horses.
Objection.
I will allow it.
Board a horse, moved to Texas.
Any interactions during that time with Mr. Trump?
No.
A reminder, you are listening to a reading of the transcript of the case of the people of the state of New York against Donald J. Trump, indictment number 71543/2023. To ensure future court transcript readings of this and other cases, we kindly ask you to visit everylegalword.com and support this cause. We now resume this reading where we left off.
Let me direct your attention now to about May of 2011. Did you agree at that time to be interviewed for an article by a magazine called In Touch?
Yes.
And first of all, what is In Touch?
It's an entertainment magazine, like a sort of tabloid fluff magazine.
How did that come about that you agreed to be interviewed by In Touch?
One of the other performers at Wicked, Randy Spears, his wife did entertainment like PR management. Her name is Gina. She reached out to me and said that someone had sold a story about me and Mr. Trump to In Touch or to a magazine. I'm not sure if she said In Touch to a magazine and they were going to do a story, and I freaked out. I didn't know who leaked it. I had just had my daughter. I said no at first. She said they're going to run it anyway. Better that you take control. I didn't have money at the time. You can't tell somebody else. You can't let someone else make money off you. You can make sure that it's accurate and get paid.
I'm going to ask you just to slow down again so that the court reporters can get you down.
I'm sorry.
So she said you can either take control of it and get paid, or someone else will have control of it?
Or someone else can basically speak for you and make money from it. And who knows what they'll say.
If you agreed to do the interview and get paid, would your agent, Gina Rodriguez, was your agent?
Yes.
Would Gina also get paid as a result?
Yes.
Did you decide to do a brief interview with In Touch?
Yes.
Why did you decide to do it?
For the reasons I just said. I would rather make money than people make money off me. And at least I could control the narratives.
How much were you supposed to get paid for the article?
$15,000.
You said you just had your daughter. Were you doing less work at that time?
Yes.
Approximately how long was the interview that you had?
It was a phone interview, like between 10 and 20 minutes.
What was your understanding about whether this article was meant to be for entertainment purposes?
One was for In Touch magazine. In Touch is it's a gossip magazine.
Did you discuss with In Touch all of the details of what happened in the room at Harris with Mr. Trump?
No. I tried to keep it fairly lighthearted and quickly to the point.
Did In Touch end up running that story in 2011?
No.
And at the time, did you know why they didn't run the story?
Not exactly. No. I know what I was told.
May we approach just for a moment?
Sure.
Judge, we're now at the point at which I would elicit that in 2011 she had an encounter in a parking lot with a gentleman who said, "Leave it alone," about the article. I would like to elicit it because, again, it's been brought out on cross-examination with Keith Davidson. It also goes to explain that because she felt threatened, why she made certain decisions about what to discuss when and what not to discuss when publicly, and why she agreed to go public with the NDA. I want to make sure I'm staying in line with Your Honor's directive.
She didn't make this claim at the time. It's much later that she starts saying she was threatened. In 2018, she said she was threatened. In 2011, she'll say she didn't tell anybody about it. We'll get into that whole sideshow, and it puts a specter of...
Are you bringing that in on cross-examination?
If she brings it in.
It's already been brought up.
What did the person say?
She was in the car with her daughter, and the person said, "It would be a shame if something happened to your daughter." They brought it out, and it's been the basis for the defamation claim. That's how they brought it out.
Remind me how?
In the opening statement, they said the courts have decided how she owed him legal fees. Michael Avenatti in 2018 released a sketch of a man in the car who threatened her. Mr. Trump said it's a con job. Mr. Avenatti said it was not. Mr. Avenatti said it was defamation. The court said it was hyperbole and not defamation. Mr. Trump, as a result, was awarded legal fees. They brought it out on cross-examination. I don't want to leave it to their cross-examination.
We're going into the fact that she owes money to Trump, and she hasn't paid it.
I do recall you bringing that out.
We were going on the fact...
The jury now is wondering why. What is she talking about? Why did this happen? I think the jury is entitled to know what led up to that, which you introduced.
I'll do it briefly.
Very briefly.
Miss Daniels, some weeks after you were interviewed by In Touch, did you have an experience in about June of 2011 with an encounter in a parking lot in Las Vegas?
Yes, I did.
Will you tell the jury just briefly what happened?
My daughter, who was an infant at the time, my daughter and I went to a postpartum, like a workout for a mommy and me workout thing. And I was approached by a man in the parking lot in Las Vegas, in the center of a shopping center that the class was located in, and thought that he was the father or a husband of one of the other women in the class. And he approached me, and I said that he threatened me not to continue to tell my story.
When you say to continue to tell your story, about who?
About my encounter with Mr. Trump.
Did you tell the police at the time?
No.
Why not?
Because he told me not to say anything at all. And I was scared. I didn't want more of the story coming out. My daughter's father was also struggling with his own personal issues at the time.
So did you tell your boyfriend at the time?
No.
About the encounter?
No.
That's because you were concerned about him?
Objection to leading.
Sustained.
Why did you not tell him?
He was struggling mentally with some postpartum stuff with our daughter and his alcoholism. And I never told him about the fact that I'd had sex with Trump. So for me to tell him then, at that moment, when his whole world was exploding, would have just not been good at all. Not on any level.
Now let me direct your attention to about October of 2011. Did you become aware at around that time that an article had come out and been posted online about your encounter with Mr. Trump on a site called thedirty.com?
Yes. Gina called and told me.
Would that be Gina Rodriguez?
Yes.
Can you just tell the jury, what is thedirty.com?
It is a site that I look at, so that I'm not that entirely sure, but it is the online equivalent to a tabloid, a gossip site, trash site.
You said Gina Rodriguez told you there was something up on thedirty.com?
Yes. Yes, yeah, she called and told me about it. I think she might have sent me a link, so I looked at it. It's not a site I look at the time, celebrity gossip site.
Did you provide information to that site?
No, I never even heard of that site at the time.
Were you concerned about it being up at the time?
Yes,
Why were you concerned?
because I had been threatened, and I didn't want the person who threatened me and my baby thinking that I'd done it.
At that point, did you want it taken down?
Absolutely.
What, if anything, did Gina, your agent,
Well,
hold up, say anything about being able to take it down?
I remember I was freaked out and crying and hyperventilating and asking her what I should do. And she asked me for permission to have her attorney remove it for me.
Did she tell you the name of her attorney at the time?
Keith Davidson.
Did you tell her that, yes, you would be happy for her attorney to try to take it down?
Absolutely,
Was he, in fact, successful in doing that?
I assume so because it came down.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention now to 2015. Were you aware at some point that Mr. Trump announced that he was running for president?
Yes.
And sometime after he announced that he was running for president, did someone reach out to you again about telling your account of what happened with Mr. Trump?
Yes.
Who was that?
Well, lots of people did.
Did Gina Rodriguez reach out to you?
Yes.
What did she suggest that she could do?
That she could sell the story again.
And did she suggest that in terms of selling the story, that money could be paid to do this?
Of course. That's the reason to sell it.
Did she say that she could make money as well?
Yes, of course.
Did there come a time that you had a conversation with a friend of yours who was also an attorney
Yes.
about whether you should publicly tell your story?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Without telling us the substance, withdrawn. Did you have a conversation with a friend of yours who is an attorney?
Lots. Yes.
And this particular friend who you had a discussion with, were you seeking legal advice from him?
No. I was just having lunch with him.
And did you decide based on a conversation with him about what you should do about getting the details of your story out?
Yes. I do remember asking him what he thought about Gina's situation because I had been threatened, and he said that he thought it was really a really good idea, that he was concerned about my safety.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
Stricken.
Did your conversation with him guide your decision to have your story documented or out there in some way?
Yes. And he helped me set up a press conference that we didn't end up doing.
Did your conversation with him and what happened to you in the parking lot in Las Vegas in 2011 guide your decision about telling your story as a way to make sure that it was documented and out there?
Yes.
And did you have an understanding at that time or belief that by doing that it would keep you safer in some way?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, did it guide your decision in general about what to do?
Absolutely.
Did you decide to let Gina try to sell your story to some news outlets?
Yes.
Do you recall in early October of 2016 the Access Hollywood tape coming out publicly?
Yeah.
You know what that is? You're aware of what that is?
Yes. Gina had actually told me about it.
Before the Access Hollywood tape came out, was Gina trying to sell your story to news outlets?
Yes.
Was she successful in doing so before that Access Hollywood tape came out?
No.
Now, after the Access Hollywood tape came out, did Gina have some conversations with you about her ability to try to sell the story after it came out?
Yes.
What, in substance, did she tell you?
In a nutshell.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you continue to agree at that time that she could sell your story to news outlets?
Yes, I told her she could keep trying. More people were calling.
What you described to the jury previously about your encounter with Mr. Trump in the hotel room, you were seeing him on a number of other occasions. The telephone calls from Mr. Trump to you, is that generally what you would have described to the news outlets at that time in October of 2016 if you had been thoroughly interviewed?
Objection.
Sustained.
At that point in October of 2016, was Gina's focus and your focus on selling the story to the news outlets?
Yes.
Did you have any intention of approaching either Mr. Trump or Michael Cohen, his attorney, to have them pay for your story?
No. My motivation wasn't money. It was to get the story out.
That was in part guided by your experience in 2011 and your conversations with
It was motivated out of fear, not money.
Did there come a time that you learned in approximately October of 2016 that Donald Trump and Michael Cohen were interested in buying the rights to your account?
Yes,
And how did you learn that?
Gina told me.
And approximately when was that Gina told you that there was interest there in paying for your story?
In October, May at the earliest, latest September. But it was October, I believe. Yeah, October.
And it was after release of the Access Hollywood tape?
Yes.
Now, who did you understand when Gina told you that? Who did you understand that Michael Cohen was representing at the time?
Donald Trump.
And did you understand at the time that they would pay for your story for you not to release it publicly?
Yes.
Objection to leading, Your Honor.
Sustained as to leading.
What did you understand that they were interested in paying you for?
They were interested in paying for the story, which was the best thing that could happen because then my husband wouldn't find out. But there was still a documentation of a money exchange and a paperwork exchange so that I would be safe and that the story wouldn't come out.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Were you told by Ms. Rodriguez how much in total would be paid from Donald Trump and Michael Cohen to purchase the rights to your story?
$130,000.
And how did you feel about that $130,000 at the time?
Didn't care. I didn't care about the amount. It was just to get it done.
Were you happy?
Of course. Well, of course, it's the money, but the number didn't matter to me. And I didn't pick the number.
And did you negotiate that number at all?
No.
Why didn't you ask for more money?
Because I didn't care about the money.
What was your financial outlook in that time in October of 2016 relative to earlier years?
It was the best it had ever been.
I'm sorry?
The best it had ever been. Instead of directing 5 movies a year, I directed 10. I'd gotten several raises. I bought a house. We no longer lived in California, which was really expensive, and I was able to go back to work. I was working for a while, but it was on camera and on stage. Things were good, very good. I was winning with my horses, too.
Let me direct your attention to October 10th, 2016. Were you presented on that date with an agreement to sign at that time?
Yes.
Tell us how that occurred and what sort of an agreement.
It was an NDA.
Explain to the jury what an NDA is, what your understanding of an NDA is.
NDA stands for non-disclosure. It is a contract between people or parties to keep information secret.
And who did you understand was the beneficiary of that NDA?
Donald Trump.
Who was representing him at the time?
Michael Cohen.
Let me now ask you to show, please, People's 63, which is in evidence. You can display that for everyone. Can we blow up the body of that email, please? Can you read that? First of all, can you tell us who the email is from and who it's to?
It's from Keith Davidson, and it was to Michael Cohen.
Who is Keith Davidson in relation to you at this point?
He was acting as my attorney. He was Gina Rodriguez's attorney who handled this sort of thing for her.
Did you understand he would handle this NDA for you?
Yes.
Who is the email? You said it's from Keith Davidson to who?
To Michael Cohen.
What does it say in the to line?
To Michael Cohen, Trump Organization, First Administrative Group.
What does the subject line say?
SD versus RCI.
Can you read, please, the email for us?
What's that? Sorry?
From Michael.
Read the email?
Yes, please.
It says, Michael, please find Ms. Daniels, settlement agreement, and side letter agreement attached. I have not filed in the side letter agreement, SLA, which identities the parties to this agreement under the terms of agreement, neither my client or I entitled to possession of the SLA. The settlement sum is $130,000. I have also attached my firm's wiring instructions for your reference. Ms. Daniels expressed dissatisfaction with your schedule. of a delay for the 10 days for funding. To that end, you'll see that I placed this Friday, 10/14/16, as the funding deadline. Let me know if this is a problem. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns about anything. Keith. Then his cell phone.
Did you express dissatisfaction and want this signed and done by October 14th?
Absolutely.
Why was that?
Because I was afraid that if it wasn't done before the nominations and things, that I wouldn't be safe, or that he would never pay, and there would never be a trial to keep me safe.
When you say before the nomination, was Mr. Trump already the nominee at that point of the Republican Party?
I believe so. In the election, sorry, this election is what I meant to say, the election.
That's okay. What did you understand were the general terms of this confidential settlement agreement or non-disclosure agreement?
I'm not sure I understand.
What did you understand at this point about what the general terms were of this agreement?
So that in exchange for the sum of $130,000, that I could not tell my story, that he also couldn't tell the story, that could not contact each other or each other's families or representatives. We had to pretend like we didn't know each other or others at all, basically.
And that you would get paid the sum of $130,000?
Correct.
Do you remember if there was a liquidated damages or damages clause if you breached?
Yeah. If I spoke, it was like $1 million every time I said something.
Can we show page 2 now of this exhibit, People's 63? Do you recognize this side letter agreement?
Yes.
What was your understanding of the purpose of this side letter agreement?
To identify who the fake names were.
What do you mean by that? Were there actual names disclosed in the NDA?
No. In the original paperwork, instead of saying Stormy Daniels or Stephanie Clifford, it identified me as one party and Mr. Trump as the other party. They gave us like fake names, like pseudonyms of Peggy and David. I think it was David.
David Dennison?
Yeah. This was the side letter that went to it that identified that I was Peggy and he was David.
Can we just take a quick look at page 3 on the PDF of this signature line? Is that your signature there on the line for Peggy Peterson, a.k.a. Stephanie Gregory Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels?
Yes.
And how did you sign it?
Stephanie Clifford. What do you mean?
What's the date that you signed it?
Oh, 10/10/16.
And you signed it with your name as Peggy Peterson, is that right?
Correct.
Now, if we could look, did you also initial this agreement with initials PP for Peggy Peterson?
Yes.
Let's look at the settlement agreement, page 1, which I believe is page 4 on the PDF. Can you show the bottom place where it shows the initials of PP? Did you initial it PP?
Uh-huh.
As far as you recall, did you initial various pages as Peggy Peterson?
Yes.
Can we take a look at page 10 of the PDF where there's a list of names? This is page 10 of the settlement agreement. Do you see a list of names there?
Yes.
What were those list of names? Did you write in those list of names?
I did.
Why did you write them in?
Because I was asked to write down names of people who knew all the details.
Those were some of the people that you told?
Yes.
Can we look also at page 15, please, of the agreement, which is page 18 in the PDF? Can we blow up the signature, please? This is the non-disclosure agreement or the settlement agreement. And did you sign it?
Yes.
What did you sign it as?
Peggy Peterson.
And why did you not put your real name there?
Because I was instructed not to. That we were using pseudonyms.
After you signed the agreement, the side letter agreement, and the settlement agreement, otherwise known as a non-disclosure agreement, did Gina Rodriguez generally just keep you updated on the progress of the deal?
Yes.
And did you get paid the $130,000 on October 14th, 2016, as was disclosed in that email?
No. It was late.
What did you understand about the reason for the delay? What was happening?
I don't know why it was late. He just kept making excuses.
And what is your understanding about who kept making excuses?
Michael Cohen to Keith Davidson because of Trump to Cohen and Cohen to Davidson.
That was your understanding?
Yes,
Because you understood Michael Cohen represented Mr. Trump?
correct.
Were you concerned about why these excuses were being made and there was a delay in the payment?
Yes.
What was your concern?
Well, I mean, he obviously, that sum of money shouldn't matter. So it wasn't a financial delay. So it made me more concerned that something bad was going to happen, and that if it wasn't done before the election, that it was not ever going to happen, because it got whatever he would get whatever he wanted. And it goes all the way back to me not being safe.
Let me direct your attention now. Judge, would you like to break soon or would you like me to continue?
Is this a good breaking point?
Certainly.
Jurors, we will take a lunch recess. I remind all of you my instructions, including not to discuss this case either amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Continue to keep an open mind as to the defendant's guilt or innocence. Please do not form or express an opinion as to the defendant's guilt or innocence. Let's get started at 2 o'clock. All rise. You may step down. Is there anything else that we need to discuss at this time?
No, Your Honor.
No.
I'm going to hand up a copy of the stipulation that was entered into evidence the other day to be marked as court exhibit.
Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.
You have been listening to a verbatim reading of every legal word contained within a publicly accessible, unsealed, and open court document. The reading may have contained minor idiosyncrasies such as mispronunciations or slight stumbles by the reader. It is important to note the document is freely available to the public in its entirety. The purpose of this reading was solely to recite the words present in the transcripts without any alteration or interpretation of their meaning. To support this endeavor, please visit everylegalword.com. Thank you for listening.